Today, I'm going to be talking about creating pollinator, edible, and nature-connected gardens and landscapes. I have my company Earth Love Gardens, which we started in 2018, and our mission is to connect people authentically within themselves, each other in community, and with the earth. So happy that you are here with me today, and let's get started. As I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about pollinator gardens, edible gardens, and nature and connecting with nature. Um, and this is through the lens of my company, Earth Love Gardens, where we create garden beds, hoop houses, native plant pollinator gardens, and we lead teams of volunteers to install projects for nonprofits. And also we do seminars like right now and landscape consultations, all in the realm of growing tasty foods in your gardens and landscapes and growing the proper plants for the ecosystem. And when we incorporate all these things, we have a healthy habitat that feeds both you and wildlife, and that has so many benefits. So I will start about what we do again. We build raised beds. We give you everything you need to start growing, including redwood garden bed or optional cedar. Again, we've been doing this since 2018, built hundreds of raised garden beds for people all over the Front Range. And then we also do landscape design. And we do this both locally and internationally because we can also do it remotely, so that we can empower people all over the world to utilize the best practices to utilize native plants, which we'll go further into, to benefit the pollinators and the rest of the ecosystem and be as water-wise as possible, especially here in Colorado, because water is a precious resource that's also becoming more expensive. It's very important to utilize proper plants that are both functional and very beautiful. And we're going to go into some details about those later on. And again, we also work with nonprofit organizations. We work with many, such as the Boulder Public Library's Native Plant Demonstration Garden. We've also worked with Habitat Humanity and many more. We're currently working with Denver Botanic Gardens at Chatfield Farms, where we're renovating a 3,200 square foot garden area to make it with redwood raised garden beds and crusher fine accessible walkways. And we started on Monday where it was just dirt, and we are going to finish tomorrow where it'll be very beautiful, and people are very excited to start growing in it. So my story, again, started in 2018, and I started just by the curiosity of seeing there's a thing called an Ames action hoe, or a hula hoe, or a stirrup hoe, and it allows you to weed. So I was curious about weeding. I just put a post on Nextdoor asking who wants their yard weeded, and it turns out in June many people want their yards weeded. So I learned that really quickly. And then my first clients, who I'm still connected with, were a couple who are very much into permaculture, which I will also go into later. And things just, yeah, it was the right thing. I found my passion, and I felt this connection to the land because I'm originally from Florida, and being from Florida, landscaping, my experience with landscaping was dad telling me, in the heat of summer, let's buy mulch at Walmart and let's, mulch around the plants in the front yard. So my upbringing with being outside in nature and landscaping was something that I wanted to go inside for and be in the air condition. So once I moved to beautiful Colorado in the heat of the summer, which was nothing compared to Florida, I just love being outside. And I love taking my shoes off and weeding in people's yards. I was loving it. and I still love it. And this is now year 7 of us doing what we do. We went from weeding with the intention of weeding people's yards so they can start growing food in the places where there are weeds, which weeds also have medicinal benefits, which I wanted to share with people too. And then later that fall, I actually we started making our raised beds. And being from Florida, I thought it was crazy that people can garden for less than half the year here. So I started making cold frames. I bought these kits, and then later I started making hoop houses with more, ourselves rather than the kits. And it took off in September. It was a hit, and we've been making raised beds ever since. And then the following springtime, we did the Colorado Garden and Home Show hosted by the Colorado Garden Foundation. And every year they've connected us with all the grant recipients across the state because they love what we do and we love helping with community projects as part of our mission. And one of those organizations was the Audubon Rockies. We've connected with the Audubon Rockies after the Garden and Home Show, and we learned the importance of creating bird and pollinator habitat. So once we started doing bird and pollinator habitat plus the edible gardens, what else do you really need for your gardens? So I was happy to merge the two. And then in 2022, I did the Boulder Permaculture Design course, and just impassioned my passion for what I do, because as we'll get to the next slide, part of my mission is also allowing people to connect with their hearts and connect with the land. And part of what I wanted people to do is, the earth, she gives so much love to us, and I wanted us to give our love and appreciation back to her. And, so to allow people just like myself to learn the greatness of reconnecting with the land, I wanted to share that with everybody. So here I am sharing the importance of living from our hearts, grounded with the earth, and being good people, being coming from a healthy, authentic place, and doing this with other people to create great, healthy community. Like, what else do we need? So yeah, and we've been doing this for now 7 years now, and things have really taken off, and it's really, really exciting. So as I mentioned, I like to come from a place that of recognition that everything is connected. This came to me 2018 when I started my business, connecting with the land. Like, I was really intuitive about it, but it always felt, kind of woo-woo. But when I joined the permaculture course, and a woman, great woman, her name is Andrea, she runs the Harvest of All First Nations, a really great organization worth checking out. Um, she shared that in indigenous knowledge and wisdom, indigenous cultures, they first come from a place, first considering the earth and first considering from the heart. And I always loved how if you rearrange heart and earth, they're the same. If you rearrange the letters, you get the same, they use the same letters. So yes, and when she shared that, I was impassioned with what I do, because this wasn't just woo-woo, this was also aligned with indigenous wisdom. So in indigenous wisdom, I really feel needs to be shared. And I know I'm not indigenous to the land, but I can do my best to be a steward for her, and be in protection, because it really is worth protecting. And I hope to share that with everybody so that we can really protect the earth and make the best of our lives, which are very temporary, and while we're here. Yeah. So yeah, when we come from a heart connected, grounded place, we produce goodness because we're coming from a good place. And I just wanted to take a minute or two. I know it's now almost 7, and some of you had busy days, including me, and we're now staring from a computer for an hour and a half. So I wanted to take a little time to just breathe, and this is a quick meditation. If you would like, I'm going to do it, just to connect from our hearts and then connect with the land. And yeah, and it allows us to come from a peaceful place where goodness just naturally flows and grows. Yes. So I invite you to just close your eyes and just imagine your all the energy coming from your head dropping into your heart. Imagine your perspective of where you're coming from, where you live your life is coming from your heart. And just enjoy and just feel what that feels like. We can take deep breath. There are multiple breaths. And further drop that energy, allow that energy to connect through your feet, down to your feet, and with the land beneath your feet. And just imagine from your feet to the earth, back up to your heart, to outside the top of your head, into the cosmos, as I've learned in herbalism. Uh, uh, just imagine all this energy going, up and down and radiating from your heart. Ah, and just enjoy it. Ah, and allow me to share the next slide. Pollinators. What is a pollinator? A pollinator is an insect or animal that moves pollen from the male anther of a flower to the female stigma of a flower. Pollinators are a necessary component of sustaining life on Earth for all species. It's said that 80% of flowering plants and most native plants need insects for adequate pollination. So pollinators' health and well-being are important for the health of any ecosystem. And as many of you are already aware, pollinators are very important for your veggie gardens. Many of you may have experienced that the insanity of needing to take a toothbrush and brushing your squash flowers to the next squash flower. So we don't want to learn, we live in a world where we need toothbrushes to pollinate our squash. So what we can do is grow habitat, no matter how small, and we can make it really big, to both benefit your veggie gardens and our local ecosystem, and thus, through the butterfly effect, the whole world. So what are some types of pollinators? We'll get right into it. Native bees. There are over 20,000 bee species found worldwide. Fun fact for if you don't already know, honeybees are not native. They're very popular because they give us tasty honey, but they're actually from Eurasia. So yeah, the priority for us is to support the 946 native bee species in Colorado. And they come in many shapes and different levels of fuzziness. As we can, like, you sometimes, during the summer, you'll see the big fuzzy, colorful bumblebees. Um, yeah, and so we want to support them. And then, there's little bees that will pollinate your small native plants, like bluebell bellflower that hosts some really small pollinators. So we want to create a really diverse garden to support the whole ecosystem. And we'll get further into that in a bit. Butterflies. There are almost 300 species of butterflies that go across Colorado. Uh, Flies, beetles, wasps, and hummingbirds. Which, speaking of hummingbirds, if you want to invite them into your yard, better than refined sugar, red hummingbird feeders, it's best to grow native plants that have red tubular flowers because they love red and they love to utilize their long beaks to suck out the nectar and thus then spread the pollen to the next flower. Uh, yeah, and more like you. Yes, with the toothbrush. So, there are three main causes of pollinator loss, including pesticides. So when you can, if you can, don't use pesticides. Yeah, do what you can to holistically take care of your yard. Habitat loss, stop mowing down the forest, and climate change, which, there's that. So what can we do about that? Small steps from your end. don't spray chemical pesticides that kill the beneficial insects, preserve habitat, do what we can to, preserve what we do have because nature already created something perfect. So we want to keep it going and create new habitat, which I want to further help you learn how to do here. Here's two examples of some habitat that we created through Earth Love Gardens. The picture at the bottom left was with Habitat for Humanity Restore in Fort Collins, which we did in partnership with the Audubon Rockies. And in 2 weeks, we transformed what was just weeds and grass. It wasn't, it wasn't really being taken care of, but they wanted something that they could really appreciate. So we created a xeriscape with Colorado native plants, as you can see. And then the other picture is the Sexual Assault Victims Advocate Center in Loveland, which we created a bird and pollinator friendly healing habitat. So let's get into native plants. Plants that are native to your ecoregion support the most amount of native bird, pollinator, and other wildlife species. Research by entomologist Doug Tallamy, he's really big in the native plant world, has shown that native oak trees support over 500 species of caterpillars, while ginkgo trees, which is a commonly planted landscape tree that's originally from Asia, hosts only 5 species of caterpillars. So if you're going to plant a tree, plant an oak, not a ginkgo. And for Colorado, we have the Gamble oak, which is native to here. So Gamble oak is a really good choice. And then native plants are among the easiest and inexpensive to maintain as they are acclimated to the conditions of our ecoregion. So because they're from here, it's just intelligent to utilize plants that are from here. Yes, they utilize less water, they support the ecosystem, and many of them are beautiful. And they're also very resilient, so less maintenance and tree care and plant care is necessary because they like our not so great, not so dark, clay heavy Colorado soils. And I wanted to share that many native plants are edible. So you can also plant plants that are tasty for you too. Service berries is one of the best ones. It has sweet berries and it also attracts birds. So you might, have to, work it out with the birds of who's taking the berries, but I'm sure everybody can, take from the serviceberry. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote the Braiding Sweetgrass, recently published a book called The Serviceberry, which I haven't read yet. But if you love Braiding Sweetgrass, which I recommend reading that book, I hear the serviceberry, which shares that nature really shares in abundance, including the serviceberry. So there's enough berries for you and the birds. Really gets into that. Another native plant, one of my favorites, is golden currant. It grows about really roughly around 6 feet wide and tall, but some can get bigger or smaller. And they have a sweet tart taste, which I think sometimes tastes like bacon and waffles. So I invite you to taste them and see if they taste like that for you. I really like this plant also because you can grow it in part shade areas. So if you have a part shady area in your yard and you want to grow something native and you also want to grow something tasty, it's a really great choice. And also if you want to fill in space because it can get rather big, grow a few and it'll fill out, a good amount of space. And wild plum. Many of you are seeing the plums bloom across Colorado right now. Maybe even in other areas too, because I know there's many people joining in from other parts of the country and possibly the world right now. Yeah, wild plum is a native plant. As long as you get the right variety, you need to get Prunus americana, because that's our native species, which also is native in many other parts of the country. And they grow plums that are tart and sweet, and I think they're pretty tasty. And birds love them. And then with those flowers, the pollinators love them too. So according to Resource Central, a 5,000 square foot Kentucky bluegrass lawn uses about 18,000 500 gallons of water a month, which is crazy. That's a lot of water. And then about half of Colorado homes' typical water use is for outdoor use. So that means half of it's being inside. So do what you can to take shorter showers, although I'm guilty for uh, long hot showers. Especially after a long day of working out and, creating people's gardens. Um, yeah. And then, so what you want to do is remove the non-native grass turf, like, non-native fescues and Kentucky bluegrass, and replace it with beautiful native plants, edibles, or native grasses, um, which buffalo grass and blue grama grasses are both native to Colorado, short grasses that are utilize very little water and look very beautiful and also support some insects. Really is beneficial for the ecosystem. And if you utilize a native grass turf with pollinator plants around it, either you can mix it and create like a wildflower prairie meadow for your yard, which is really pretty. Or you can just have, buffalo grass mixed with blue grama grass, and then around the perimeter, you can have like perennials, just different design aspects, which I get into because I also do landscape design. Speaking of which, so if you want to create a landscape design, which is a really good idea if you want to implement these ideas that we're talking about right now, a landscape design rather than, off the cuff, go, just plant as you go. It allows you a top-down, wider plan for how you're going to implement your landscape. You can really plan out what's going where. You can plan out based off of the shade of your yard. You can plan out walkways. You can plan out different areas like garden bed area. You can plan out a lot of things. So, it really is helpful to have, not only in step by step, but also knowing how many materials to order, like how much mulch to order, or rocks, or bigger boulders, all types of materials, plants. And as I like to have fun with making people's landscape designs, it's great to have fun with your plan. You can really, put on paper, or on a computer, you can really help envision your dreams. Like, you really can bring the garden of your dreams to life. And, with all the things we're sharing tonight, you can then, plan the proper plants for edibles and for pollinators, and both. Getting a question real quick, what program are you using? The program that I use is called Real-Time Landscape Architect, Real-Time Landscaping Architect. They have a free trial, I believe. Otherwise, you have to pay. It's one-time payment, and it's a lot of professionals utilize this program, and you can do it 2D. You can also do it in 3D. Yeah, it's really helpful. So bloom colors and times, when you are designing your landscape with these native plants, it's important to consider uh, the bloom colors and the times of the season that these plants are blooming, both for the aesthetic effect and as well as for the functional effect of creating pollinator habitat throughout the season, because you don't want everything to bloom out in spring and you have nothing for the summer or fall, um, or for any of those seasons. So you want to stagger it, and you'll always have colors pop throughout the season when you plan your garden right. So for example, as you can see in the screen, the bottom left, Rocky Mountain Penstemon has purple flowers, and you'll see that's one of your first blooming plants in the spring. And then that'll soon go away. And then soon enough, you'll have the red, orange, and yellow blanket flowers, which is one of my favorites. I think it's really pretty. It looks like it was painted. And pollinators love that plant. I had one on my windowsill garden box, just one flower, and it was a pollinator magnet. it was visited by hummingbirds and I believe bees and spiders were liking it. Like, and that was just one flower. So if you had a lot of these flowers, like you would really create an oasis and haven for the pollinators. And blue bellflower, Campanula rotundifolia, as its Latin name is, which you see in the bottom right, that hosts a lot of specialty pollinators that are really small. It's good for fitting in small spaces, and also can take part shade, so that's a good thing. It's versatile. And yellow rabbit brush in the middle there at the bottom, which you'll notice a lot in the fall, these coming into bloom, these big shrubs that, are also native to a lot of these vast flat landscapes. So some of my favorite full sun perennial flowers include swamp milkweed, which is also good for absorbing moisture because it's from the swamp, and also host for monarch butterflies and other pollinators. Stiff goldenrod, which you see in the top right. Yeah, everything should be in order here. Stiff goldenrod also has many herbal uses as well. And then white yarrow also has many herbal uses. And fringe sage, which smells great. And, if you want to sage a room or your life, uh, it's a great plant, and pollinators love it too. And then we have chocolate flower, which actually does smell like chocolate, and it's a native plant, so that's fun. And then it also has herbal benefits as well. And I think all of these do, most do. Uh, the indigenous people, their culture, and they really connected with the plants, and there's a lot to learn from the plants, and the plants have a lot to share with us. So in addition to benefiting the pollinators and us visually, um, yeah, it's worth further checking out, seeing how they can further provide for us as we provide for them and share them wherever we can. And then we have a purple coneflower, echinacea, which makes really good echinacea tea. That's native to Colorado, called narrow leaf purple coneflower. If you're planting in shade, which I will say that the past full sun plants, most Colorado native plants do grow in full sun because, before there were all these structures here, you had either the plains and the prairie, and then you jump into the mountainous region. So these plains and prairie plants, they get mostly full sun. And you'll see that many of these mountainous plants are the ones that you also plant in shade, such as Rocky Mountain columbine, our state flower, bluebell bellflower, and then snowberry, which is in the bottom middle there, which actually has those white little berries that it has later on in the year. That's not edible, don't eat it, but it was used by the indigenous to make soap. So it has, yeah, so you can try that. And it can take full shade pretty much, and it's a big shrub. So if you need to fill some space with a native plant, it's a great choice. Creeping Oregon grape in the bottom right there, which is one of my favorites, will take full shade, and it has these astringent berries, little Oregon grapes, which you'll see popping around your neighborhood if people have planted Oregon grape. Which there's two varieties. There's the regular Oregon grape, which is more native to Oregon, which is like the cousin to our creeping Oregon grape, which forms more of a ground cover. Which they recently changed the name officially, but I still know it as Mahonia repens. And the non-native variety, which is more upright and more of a shrub form, is Mahonia aquifolium. And tufted hairgrass, which can take some shade, and it's a nice bunch grass. And I wanted to share this question real quick because there's only one. And feel free to ask your questions too, because after this section, I'm gonna, answer a few question and answers. before I get into the next section. And same thing as later. Once we're talking about the next section, I'm going to get into answering the questions that have to do with what we're talking about next. So we'll have some little break off question and answer sessions throughout. And Nikki asks, are there particular native plants that are good for planter boxes, like on a deck rail? So two things about this. From what I've learned, native plants like to root deeply. However, don't tell that to the blanket flower that I planted on my planter box on my deck railing, or the bluebell bellflower. Both were happy, and both could, I don't know, could come back, but I don't keep the planter box on the railing on the off season, so it might be more like purchasing these perennials and then acting like they're annuals. But the pollinators love it, and it's really pretty to see on my windowsill. So those are two examples from experience. There's probably more, but make sure that when you're choosing these native plants for your window box, make sure they don't need deep roots in order to survive. And we'll go into questions in a bit. So if you're planting for part sun and part shade areas, some of my favorites include butterfly weed, which also hosts butterflies. Believe also the monarch likes butterfly weed, as well as the swamp milkweed. I think it's a type of milkweed. So it's really great for the monarch and other pollinators, and it's really pretty too, with its orange flowers. Firecracker penstemon, which will attract hummingbirds. Black-eyed Susans, bee balm, desert 4 o'clock, which is a really cool plant. It can take parts shade, and it grows like really wide. Like it can grow roughly around 5 feet wide, they say, and it'll grow fast. And it'll grow these pretty, you'll see in the bottom left picture there, these pretty pink flowers. Yeah, so if you want a space to fill out quickly, desert 4 o'clock is a really great choice. And again, like I mentioned, it's one of my favorite plants, golden currant, with its bacon and waffle tasting currants. Some of my favorite native grasses include blue grama grass, prairie switchgrass, Indian grass, little blue stem, big blue stem, and tufted hair grasses. Grasses also serve the additional benefit to providing shelter for birds. And there are also some species of caterpillar butterfly, which, caterpillars do grow into butterflies, right? That are supported by these grasses. And also from an aesthetic standpoint, they're beautiful when you're creating a native plant garden to have these, low grasses and striking tall grasses to create a beautiful effect that also just benefits the diverse ecosystem. Some recommended native shrubs also include red osier dogwood, which has its really beautiful red stems in the winter. So it also provides winter interest for your yard. And it can take some shade too. Lead plant, which is recommended as an alternative to Russian sage, because many people like to plant Russian sage. And it's a great plant because it's xeric, but hence the name. It's not even from Russia. It's actually from by Afghanistan, so I hear. So they say rather than plant the Russian sage, plant the lead plant, because it has these beautiful purple flowers that way more benefits our local ecosystem. As well, they are nitrogen fixers. So they will take nitrogen from the air, bring it into the soil, and then spread it to your other plants nearby, providing more nitrogen, which is natural fertilizer for the plants that are growing around the lead plant. So not only, does it benefit the ecosystem, it also directly benefits your plants that are growing around. Apache plume, which is in the bottom middle there, western sand cherry, and snowberry again. And a few more: shrubby cinquefoil, which is in top right there. It can take some shade. Woods rose, which can take some shade and has its tasty rose hips as well. And mountain nine bark. Some recommended native trees include Gamble oak, which I've mentioned before, Rocky Mountain maple, which will grow in sort of a tree shrub form. It's like a shrubby tree. So just know that it'll often do that. And chokecherry, which I believe the chokecherries are edible. And again, like the Rocky Mountain maple, it's going to be more like a shrubby tree. And I believe you can also cut the shoots back just to make it more single stem form. Yeah, and these are great large native plants that will look beautiful in your yard and also support the ecosystem. And a few more. Quaking aspen, which if you're not at elevation, if you're not up in the mountains and you're down in the Front Range at, mile high and around that, many people like to plant aspen, but then they've soon learned that two things: it likes to grow everywhere because that's what aspens do, and they don't survive very long because they're out of their natural habitat. So know this if you want to plant aspen at your non-mountainous home. Wild plum again, there's some of the tasty plums growing in abundance, and pinon and ponderosa pines, which many of you may already have in your landscape. They birds, you'll see them, utilizing them as habitat. And I don't have it here, but one of my favorites, and also our state tree, is Colorado blue spruce. So that's another great native tree choice. For native ground covers, there's Panchito manzanita, which is a crossbred manzanita plant that is very versatile, very hardy. It's also evergreen. You'll see that in the top left there. Creeping Oregon grape again. If you plant a bunch of them, it'll create a nice matting ground cover, especially if you have like full shade. Pussy toes, which are called that because they look like the toes of a pussycat. And you can create a nice, beautiful mat, and it has these white flowers that pollinators also love. Wine cups again, so you see it growing outside of a curb right there. Or there's wine cups and there's desert 4 o'clocks. They look sort of similar, but this one is wine cups. And then grow low fragrant sumac, which is a cultivar variety of our native sumac. And grow low has been cultivated too. You guessed it, grow low. And it grows very wide too. So if you have a lot of space to fill, it's a great choice. And then with that, I want to answer some of these questions about these native plants. Diana said, I have yellow yarrow, not white. What's the difference? I'm still figuring that one out. So if someone wants to chime in, it tends to change color because common yarrow, it sometimes you'll see it in the wild as yellow, sometimes you'll see it as white, but whenever I buy it, it's always white. But it comes out off with the same Latin name. So I'm figuring that one out too. So when we find it out, let's learn together. Olga is asking, what's the scientific name of bluebell bellflower and tufted hairgrass? Okay, bluebell bellflower is Campanula rotundifolia, and tufted hairgrass is this Dischampia something. I'm drawing a blank, but it's Dischampia something. Diana asks, how can I support bellflower? I have already to spread further. Two things. There's the invasive bellflower, which you do want to pull. It comes really long. Many people are growing it in their yards and they didn't even plant it. So you want to pull that. It's different than our native bellflower, which is really low and doesn't spread as much. It's not really a natural spreader, I haven't found. So you might need to propagate it. So if you take the seeds of each from it and then propagate it and then plant it in the spring or throughout the season, that's a great way to spread the plant where you want it to go. And also you can start a nursery. So Liz is saying regarding monarchs, it depends on the butterfly weed that is used colloquially for different plants in different areas of the state. Good to know. Um, the name of the shrubby shrub. You're gonna have to, Letty, you can clarify any more information and I'd be happy to answer. Um, what are good soft ground covers that you can use in walkways and tolerate walking on? So for native plants, there's not really great plants that are native that are for foot traffic. Even the buffalo grass is not really, used to foot traffic. It's used to the bison running on top of it, and then it further turns the soil and creates a healthy ecosystem. But yeah, but there's a bred variety called I'm gonna get back to you on that. And if someone wants to throw that comment, if you know offhand, it's called, I'm drawing a blank right now, but if you get back to me if I forget, there's two varieties of buffalo grass that have been bred to tolerate a bit more foot traffic, and I hear really great things about it. There you go. Tuft to hair grass is Deschampsia cespitosa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I just planted a blue sea holly plant. Is that one okay to have? I haven't heard of that, so it's probably not native, but we can do more research. I mean, and we don't have to be perfectionists here. Like if you have some non-native plants, like the non-native plant police aren't going to get you, but you want to plant as many native plants as possible to benefit the ecosystem. And what do you recommend instead of traditional turf grass for backyard with young kids? Again, that low, that higher foot traffic buffalo grass might be a good option. Um, Yellow yarrow was artificially manipulated for the color. In nature, you only see white. Good to know, Carolina. Uh, what's the best way to get rid of bindweed? It's so invasive. I think the CSU extension has been creating has been raising bindweed mites that you can apply for, and apparently that's supposed to help. From my own experience, cedar mulch, when we did the Colorado Native Plant Garden at the Boulder Public Library, it was full of bindweed and Canada thistle. And I thought it was always going to be a problem. But we used cedar mulch and bindweed has like basically disappeared. So I never hear about cedar mulch being like a solution for bindweed, but I found out myself that it actually works well. So I invite you to try it for your yard too. When you're installing a garden space, how do you prepare the soil? You don't want to prepare the soil too much because again, Colorado native plants don't need great soil to grow. They thrive on not so great soil. But also you don't want too not so great soil, like many houses just have fill dirt in their yards. You want to enrich it a bit. So you want to mix just like maybe a little bit of richer soil or compost, just a little bit. I think the number, people have different recommendations, but I've heard that like a third of compost mixed with the native soil there could be a good you blend for your plants. But it also depends on your soil. So test it out first. You also apply for a soil test through CSU to find the best balance for your plants and yard. Dog tuft grass is not native, but it is a great choice for low water and higher foot traffic grass. So it's better than Kentucky bluegrass. The buffalo grass, I haven't heard of sun dancer, but I'll have to get back about the one that I'm thinking of. Oh, it's called Legacy Buffalo Grass. Legacy is the cultivar buffalo grass has been bred to handle a bit more foot traffic. So I invite you to check out more about that. Grape hyacinth, is that a weed invasive? I think they're pretty, I actually don't have the definite answer for you. So if anybody wants to throw in the chat of that answer, I'm happy to learn as well. My thoughts on creeping thyme or veronica to use in stepping stones along the Front Range. They're not native, but they're beautiful and they're low water. So, we don't have to be perfect here. If you mix some of these, non-native ground covers, then, they're not that invasive. So, I invite you to do it. And I design it sometimes in people's yards too. So yeah. Uh, Marie's and grape is very invasive. They're all over your yard. So there's Marie's take. Uh, they sound to be non-native and invasive. Um, I'm going to continue. So in uh, So additional ways to create habitat. In addition to native plants, you can also create landing zones, which are these big groupings of native plants so that, they're not just, single native plants. They can really settle and feel safe and really be enriched and nurtured within these larger groupings. And these landing zones can also include snags, which is another word for logs and dead tree trunks, which also can help grow mushrooms and then further benefit the soil. Uh, you know, uh, Insects can nest in the logs, and then birds will eat out the insects. It's a cycle of life. You can build a brush pile, which might invite some, different forms of wildlife, but it's one of the things that you can do. Um, and provide extra moisture with using bird baths. And if you put stones in the bird bath, not only will birds take a drink and dip in the bird bath, but also insects can take a drink and wash off in the bird bath as well. So it'd be like a watering hole for your yard. And in maintaining the garden, another benefit of Colorado native plants is they also require very little maintenance. And for the best practices for your yard, you want to leave the stalks of last season's dead perennials to help nesting insects that have taken shelter in these stalks. They like to go down the tubes and nest in there. Leave the leaves in the fall. To give shelter to insects to nest under the leaves. And also the decomposing leaf litter also is a natural mulch and nutrient source for your garden. So they're called leaves for a reason. You leave them. And I like to share that the entire ecosystem is rewarded when you want to be lazy. So it allows you to just sit back and relax rather than always having to work on your yard when you have a Colorado native plant yard. And as I mentioned before, we designed the Boulder Public Library's Audubon Rockies Habitat Hero Native Plant Demonstration Garden. We did that in 2021, and it was before the Japanese garden, which hadn't been taken care of in a very long time. Um, and so that was before bottom left with all the bindweed and the Canada thistle and dead weeds to how it looked right after. Um, yeah, I really wanted to create an immersive experience where people can connect with the plants and the garden in general and really enjoy being outside and connect with nature and read their books, and we have their meetings and just be a beautiful connective space. And it really has become that. So that was right after. And then this was 3 months later. So Colorado native plants grow really fast. And just 1 year later, it looked like this. Yes. So they grow fast and they grow beautiful, and it's a pollinator haven. Uh, if you plant it, they will come, uh, is a catchphrase for these native plant gardens. Like they really work. When you plant the pollinator garden, it really attracts pollinators. And our world needs more pollinators and more pollinator gardens. So if you can, do what you can to, even if it's as small as a window box, because like that's all I really had. I have a little yard, but under my responsibility is the window box. And just from that one blanket flower, pollinators were loving it. So I'm going to answer a few more questions before we get into further connecting with nature. Um, let's see. How late into spring uh, do you leave the stalks of dead perennials? It's mid-April. I'm dying to clean up my garden beds. So there's many takes on what to do, but the one that I like to utilize and share is when the average temperature outside is above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, that is when the nesting insects are also leaving their stalks, and it's safer for you to clean your yard. And then you want to clean your yard, and then it's good compost material, which you could just leave right underneath the plants, and then it'll break down naturally. Or you can compost to the side in your composter. Um, let's see, different questions. There are a lot of questions. Um, Part sun, shade plants, how many hours of sun to thrive? It really depends on the plant. But when they say part shade, I believe that means at least 4 hours of sun. So as long as they're getting at least 4 hours, they should be good. But there is variance there. Uh, so you want to do research into each individual plant to make sure it's the right plant for the area that you're designing for. So I like to get into the theme of connecting with nature, which I feel, so much of our society has gone crazy because we forgot, that we're part of nature, which has all the solutions. Um, yeah, so when we reconnect with nature, we're a part of nature and we are brought back to this sanity and place of peace. And the gardens you grow are easy opportunities to connect with nature. And if you don't have a garden, you can just go outside and connect with nature. We live in a very beautiful place, so we are blessed and lucky to really connect outside, especially these days. It's really, really beautiful out. And in addition to, me just saying it, and you probably already knowing it, connecting with nature and gardening has countless health benefits, including lowering your stress, lowering your depression, anxiety, better mood, better life satisfaction, and more. It's scientifically proven, which makes sense. These things probably only happen because we're disconnected with nature. So if we reconnect, we're just reconnecting with ourselves, and that can only be a good thing. And part of that is grounding and touching the soil, which may explain why many gardeners are so happy. They actually have, soil has a bacterium in it, which I believe was studied by a CU researcher by the name of Dr. Lowry, that may stimulate serotonin production, which makes you relax and happier. So when you work with the soil, it's good for your mental health. And then grounding. I like to, take my shoes off and connect with the earth. I did say I live in Boulder, right? But everybody can do this, and this is how we evolved. Um, we didn't evolve with these insulated rubber shoes. We evolved with, feet on the ground or even leather soles. I love my leather buffalo hide leather sole moccasins. I love them so much. You know, just doing it, you just feel at resonance and connected with the planet. And it's a really good place to come from. And birds, when we are outside, they did studies that show that birds actually make us happier. They can increase people's life satisfactions as much as earning a higher income. So you can, and this is from listening to the sounds of birds. So, you can make some more money, and or you can listen to some birds. Um, so the study found that a 10% increase in the number of bird species in people's surroundings increased their life satisfaction as much as the extra 10% of money in the bank. And when you're just outside in the spring morning, and you hear the birds chirping, it's very beautiful. And there have been studies, that bird speed, the number of birds has greatly diminished in decades. Like some figures like 70% in like the past 3 or 5 decades. I have to look back at the study. And that's really unfortunate. So what can we do about that? Like plant more native plants to support the birds. The birds need somewhere to go, so they can go to your yard to get what they need to be nurtured by nature. And you can have beautiful oasis that provides for the birds and other wildlife and also make you happier. And it's important to create healthy soil because healthy soil is the basis of the pyramid of it all. And when you have healthy soils, you have plants that are more nutritious and less vulnerable to pests and diseases. It helps with erosion as soils that are healthy stick together because of its sponge-like structure. And it filters and captures rainwater to store in times when there is no water. So if you do it right and we have a drought, you can utilize the healthy soils to further water your plants. So as I mentioned before, we also make raised garden beds, and especially in Colorado, raised garden beds allow you to grow in a depth of rich soil and compost that benefits veggies and fruits, especially annuals. Our soil is very clay heavy, and instantly it provides a bed of nice rich soil that your veggies can grow in. And it also helps inhibit the growth of invasive weeds since garden beds have a different soil composition than what the weeds are used to. They don't really like the nice rich soil that the veggies like. And if a weed pops up through your garden bed, then you can just pull it out. And one thing I found is, so I created raised beds for my mom that are 7¼ inches tall. And I would recommend at least double height. So get two boards that are 7¼ inches tall. So like a 2x8x8 in lumber. Do that double. So 2x16x8. So two inches thick, which is actually 1.5 inches thick by 8 inches tall, which is actually, depending on what wood and where you got it, 7¼ inches tall and 8 feet, which can range. But if we're talking about 8x4 garden beds, which is usually the standard size, at single height, weeds still pop up. So if I was going to do it again, I would do double height. I would stack two boards on top of each other. And it helps better inhibit weed growth. And when you also have taller garden beds, they're also easier to work with. So you want to invest in it right the first time, and it's easier on your back when you can just at a higher level just work with the plants. And also another benefit of garden beds is again with the soil, they help retain more moisture, yet allow for healthy drainage of excess water. Just that healthy soil just knows how to regulate water well and better benefits your plants. And they can be placed just about anywhere. So if you have a apartment and some outdoor space, you can place it on your deck. Just make sure it's not too much weight for your deck. Because they can get into the thousands of pounds, and you find out your load bearing weight before you say that Aaron recommended building your garden bed on your deck and it falls. So yes, do your due diligence so that it is sustainable and you are growing happily and healthy on your patio. And so here are some examples of our planter boxes that we've created throughout the years. Top left is we created for Blue Shed Urban Gardens, which is ran by a great woman named Steph, who's really active in the community and reflective of our mission in creating healthy community. We created her garden beds, which were 6 of these raised beds, and then a total of 8 hoop houses, which I'll talk about in a second. Really like ignited her passion for growing food in your yard and sharing it with the community and working with different organizations. And I was happy to be part of that sparking of her fire to do this great work related to gardening and community. Bottom left is Marie L. Greenwood Academy, their school community garden. Look at that. That's a lot of veggies growing there. And then to the right, 2 garden beds that we made for a client in Golden. And that later that summer, look how big his plants got. So as I mentioned before, I'm from Florida, and I thought it was crazy that we can only garden for about 44% of the year here from frost to frost. They say you can start planting outside in during Mother's Day, but we have so many beautiful days outside now that who wants to wait another what, almost over a month? So with season extension, you can grow now. And with our hoop houses that we create, we use like the best materials possible. Um, you can grow year round because the hoop houses that we create, they have 12 mil greenhouse fabric, which is actually made for industrial greenhouses, but we cut it down to fit people's home gardens. And they warm your garden by about 30 degrees extra. So if it's 15 degrees out and lettuce grows at least 45 degrees, that extra 30 degrees will help lettuce start to grow. Although you have to be mindful, there's less sunlight during the winter. But during the winter, when they do grow, the leafy greens are sweeter because the sugars come out when it's cold out. So yeah, and then with the hoop house, you can grow now. You could have started months ago, um, instead of having to wait till Mother's Day because we have all these beautiful warm days, but then we'll have a beautiful cold frost that will kill it all. But a hoop house will protect it from the frost, so you can just keep on growing. Yeah. And how does it work quickly? It is essentially a mini greenhouse for your garden, a hoop house or a cold frame. Um, yeah, and then if you have a hoop house or a cold frame, which a hoop house is, more of a hoop structure, and then a cold frame is more of a rigid wood, it's usually wood, mini little greenhouse structure looking thing. Which I like hoop houses more because they're more, you usually have to buy the cold frame as a kit. And if you have a hoop house, you can create it yourself. And then many times if you create it yourself, it's a lot less expensive. And we're always here to create a really top of line for you as well. A little pricier than your own homemade hoop house, but it's definitely worth it. People love our hoop houses. So uh, yeah, if you want to supplementally heat your hoop house, you can add black water bottles, which absorb the extra heat and then give it off at night, or you can utilize bricks. Yeah, and then if you want to create a hoop house, we take a hoop bender and then bend it and to fit people's garden beds, and then put this 12 mil greenhouse fabric on top, add stainless steel vents and clamps, and make it really, we do what we can to make it really easy to operate. It's very easy to make. And the other reason I like hoop houses is because they're usually taller than a cold frame. So you can grow taller veggies. In a cold frame, as I found out early on when we were making them for people, the wind loves to snap their doors off. So hoop houses are also more wind resistant, usually, if you build it correctly. And I want to also get into permaculture. But before that, I want to answer a few of your garden questions. Um, let's see. Have you investigated growing veggies in window wells? Maybe elevated so you're nearer to the top of the window well for sunlight. Yeah, you can grow veggies on your window well. One plant that I really like to grow myself in my room is wheatgrass, which in just a week and a half will go from seed to wheatgrass. And also when you grow your own wheatgrass and it's really fresh, it's actually like a little sweet. So it has all of its wheatgrass benefits and it's kind of tasty. I wouldn't, it's still wheatgrass, but it's sweeter. You can add it to different things. So yes, if you have some good sunlight from in your window, you can definitely grow a lot of things. You just also want to be mindful of little like gnats and other insects that might grow inside. But with wheatgrass, I haven't had that experience. Although under a grow light for other plants a few years ago, did have experience with little flies. So you just want to be mindful of when you are growing inside. What size hoop house do you recommend for a beginner? It just really depends on your garden. Um, like most of the hoop houses that we create are 8 feet by 4 feet because that tends to be the standard size that people either have their garden beds or we create the garden beds because boards come at 8 feet long usually, and then you can cut them in half for the 4 foot sections. So, as much hoop house space as you want, you can create many and have a little mini production farm, or you can start with one and see if you want to go from there. One thing I will share that if it's like more than 12 feet long, and it's one long section, it gets kind of tedious to roll up. So you want to be mindful it's not too big in one place because it just gets to be a lot if you want to handle it yourself. How do we contact you about hoop houses? Uh, we'll talk about that at the end. My website is earthlovegardens.com, and we can build hoop houses for your garden beds and make them custom sizes, as well as we can make new garden beds too. Um, and then best places to buy native plants. It's going back to the native plant question, but and then Valerie mentions Harlequin Gardens. Uh, I love Harlequin Gardens, and I happen to live a few minutes away from Harlequin Gardens. But otherwise, they're by far the best. Another good plant nursery for native plants is the High Plains Environmental Center in Loveland, which you have to order online and then pick it up in person. But they are great to check out regarding native plants. And then, native plants, you'll find regular nurseries that also have native plants. And also one thing to also be mindful is for these regular nurseries that also have native plants, you want to do your best to buy plants from these nurseries that don't spray, and most of them do, because they're spraying for pesticides, but they're also killing the beneficial insects as well. And eventually it'll wear off, but like you don't want to create a pollinator garden and then invite all these pollinators and then you kill them for a year or so. But it happens if you can't find it anywhere else. But do what you can to first find the plant nurseries that raise their plants holistically. Let's continue. Permaculture principles. As I said, I took the permaculture course in 2022, and I love permaculture. It's a really intelligent way to create systems that benefit the land and people and our own personal lives through beneficial synergies, and utilizing no waste. They use a lot of the same materials and closed loop systems to create natural, diverse natural systems. And like step one for permaculture is observe and interact. There's 12 permaculture principles that you follow. And this one's really helpful when you're creating a garden. You don't just want to, like, for example, just buy a new home and just like start planting. Like you never know like what there is to observe. That's good to know before you design and plant. It saves you money, saves you the frustration. So yeah, so they say wait a whole year, like observe all the seasons to see how your garden is going to be behave, and then plan. And other principles such as obtain a yield, like you want every plant in your garden to provide for you and for the pollinators, such as like wild plum. It provides for the pollinators, the birds, and you. So you want to, you can really enjoy the most benefit out of all the plants that you plant in your yard, as well as other functions, other things, other elements that you add to your yard. Produce no waste, compost your things, try to eliminate as much trash and recycling as much as possible, reuse materials, use small and slow solutions. It can be exciting to get ambitious real quickly, but then it can get, frustrating again if things aren't turning out the way you expected them to. So step by step, just do it slowly. You know, I like the quote that everything in nature happens in perfect timing. You can also do nothing and, observe the beauty of the world around you, or share the knowledge with others so that they can plant beautiful gardens. Yeah, but you want to do it patiently and at a good pace. Um, and then creatively use and respond to change. So when your garden is providing you feedback, you can listen to it and make small adjustments. Yes. And one thing that I like to share is social permaculture, which, like I said, you can apply permaculture not only to your garden, but to your life. Um, you can make sure that all the elements of your life are, say, providing a yield. And there's this concept called, there's these different zones from zone 0 to zone 5. Zone 5 is like the wild nature outside of your back 40 of your yard. Zone 1 might be your herb garden right outside of your kitchen. Zone 0 is you. So you are coming from a good place, so that you can best provide and create and be in a world to thoroughly enjoy as much as possible. So, we're talking about all these gardens, but really the priority is you, because you're part of the garden and you are the one creating the garden, uh, and you're a part of nature. So nature wants you to be at a whole holistic space. Yes. So that it concludes my presentation. Um, and I invite you to visit our website again at earthlovegardens.com. We provide raised garden beds and provide you everything you need to start growing. Hoop houses, so you can grow year round, both for the new garden beds we create or existing gardens. We do landscape designs. We do pollinator, native plants, landscape designs, as well as edible landscape designs. People love the landscape designs that I create for them. I get really great reviews, so I can just say, you can see the website, you can see what people say, and you see my work. And then we also, if you have a community organization, I love to work with nonprofits and lead your volunteers and other groups of volunteers to install these designs that we create. And it's a fun community building exercise where all the hands can have a hand in creating these beautiful gardens and connecting with nature and creating a really cohesive community. So if you have a nonprofit and you want a garden project, I'd be happy to speak with you. And also landscape consultations. If you don't want a landscape design or thinking about it, I also can come out to your yard and or other property of any size and provide consultation as we walk through the land. And also speaking engagements, happy to share more at other times. And yeah, so let's answer some of your questions. And if you haven't asked any so far, go open the Q&A section and type your question, and I'd be happy to answer it as long as it seems like a good question and I can answer. Let's see. PPAN is a great source for native plants. They have numerous giveaways around the region. Yes, PPAN is a great source of native plants, and as well as other pollinator information. Another great organization is Wild Ones, which is national. So if you're coming from, if you're watching this right now and are somewhere else in the country, you can find your local Wild Ones chapter. Otherwise, on the Front Range, we have the Front Range Wild Ones, and they have multiple plant swaps throughout the year. So they're a great way to connect with other great people and swap plants. And if you don't want plants to swap, then they'd be happy to provide. But they want you in with the community to know the knowledge and wisdom that the native plants provide. Deborah asks, what territory do you and your team work, Front Range or beyond? Yes, I'm based in Boulder, but I've traveled the whole Denver metro area up to, Fort Collins, down the, like Lone Tree area. And if you're further, with a travel fee, I'm happy to go further, which we can discuss what that travel fee would look like. And if you have a landscape design, I can also design it remotely. Again, through aerial imagery, and I have a really detailed questionnaire that you fill out photos and inspiration photos. I can design a landscape all over the world. So really, we're boundless. Yeah. Um, let's see. You state native plants grow well in Colorado soil. You also are recommending planter boxes. What soil needs to be used in planter boxes? Yes. So in my case, when I was growing the blanket flower and bluebell bellflower on my windowsill, I honestly used just like regular soil made for, perennials and even veggies. So yes, they can sometimes grow in darker soils. They can be versatile, but that's just not what they're acclimated to. So, it's just better suited for these plants to, as best you can, plant them in soils that they're just used to. Um, I want to spray my apple trees this year, but do not want to harm pollinators. What is the best way to do this? And it depends why you want to spray them. If you're trying to fertilize them, um, I like natural fertilizers. Compost tea is a great option. It's a liquid form of compost, and you can spread it around the roots, and it could only help your apple trees. Um, as well as in permaculture, there's the concept of a plant guild, which is where you group different plants with different functions, um, to help support each other. So if you say plant lead plant on the southern side of your apple tree, this will provide extra nitrogen for the apple tree, and create this healthy little ecosystem there. Kathy asked to name my computer program again for landscape design. It's called Real-Time Landscaping Architect. Um, let's see. It's my understanding that cedar mulch repels spiders and other beneficial insects. What's your take on using cedar mulch in eco-restoring landscaping? Again, perfect can be what the enemy of good, or however that goes. So yes, whenever there is something, that you use for your yard, like there's always going to be drawbacks. From my experience, the cedar mulch at the native plant demonstration garden, perhaps with what I've learned now, after years, maybe not use cedar mulch, but it really has helped with the weed inhibition. But it's full of insects and pollinators and birds. So, maybe there'd be more if it was a different type of mulch, like a pine mulch. But, yeah. And there's also like, what's it called? Horticultural vinegar, which is like a 30% or more vinegar spray that is good for killing weeds. It's pretty natural. However, at the same time, they say that it also can kill, insects. So, there's always drawbacks to everything, so just you want to consider all the elements that go into the things you do and just weigh out what's the best. But, overall, you're doing so much more than so many other people. So that if it's not perfect, still doing a great job. And Teresa mentioned worms. Worms are also good for your annual veggie gardens, specifically worm castings, which are worm poop, are really, really great nutrient fertilizers for your gardens. In fact, I used a relatively small amount, and it was too hot for my plants that I was growing, and it actually didn't do too well. So you want to use even less, and a little goes a long way. So worm castings and worms in general. So just having a good ecosystem of worms in your garden, both is a good indicator of a healthy soil. And if you don't have enough worms, you can always add more, and it'll help the whole ecosystem of your soil. Wood mulch versus gravel mulch for native plants. So there's different parts of this, the answer here. I personally like wood mulch more. It's a byproduct of the landscaping industry. So, it's wood chips and it's reusing something, at the same time, when you ask, many Firewise experts, they like to minimize wood mulch and use gravel instead. But the thing is, gravel has to come from somewhere. It's all mined from the mountains pretty much. So you have to blow up the mountain and then travel it with a truck down the mountain. And then it's so yeah, there's different, like I mentioned before, there's drawbacks and benefits to everything. So you really want to weigh it out. One thing that I really like to do is mix different mulch areas and gravel areas, which really great gravel for native plants is called, they call it squeegee. And squeegee is, if you're familiar, it's thicker than crusher fines, but smaller than pea gravel. And it really mimics the type of rocks that native plants are used to growing in the wild. And they retain moisture pretty well, apparently. And yeah, so squeegee rock is a really great option if you want to use gravel for your native plant landscapes. When first planting native plants, do you add any fertilizer or mycorrhiza to the whole? Yes, like fungus. Like I said, I like to, if you have like not so great soil, maybe like a 1-to-3 blend of 1/3 compost mixed with the native soil, and that should get you started with a good basis for native plants. Neem oil with peppermint for pest control on trees and plants. I hear mixed results about this. Like for some people it works really well, and for some people it doesn't do anything. But it's worth trying it because it is all natural, and I don't believe it repels pests, but I don't think it really kills them. Okay, my HOA loves rock over landscape fabric, which I don't like, and I don't like it either. What is your opinion on landscape fabric use? So yeah, this is one that I'm working with. We did a project that we didn't do landscape fabric underneath the rock, and then the client wasn't happy that the weeds were growing on their new landscape. So there's that, and then you do landscape fabric, and for a few years it works, and then few late years later, sometimes it breaks down anyway, and then the weeds grow anyway. So it's hard to have a perfect solution. One thing that I've learned, I haven't tried it myself, but I hear good results, I believe, is when you get rolls of cardboard paper, like craft paper, I believe, and you use that instead of landscape fabric. That that helps inhibit the weeds and also changes the soil composition so the weeds don't grow as well. And yeah, so that could be one option. Yeah, I'm seeing if there's any more questions that I can answer. How do I support bees but keep wasps away from my doors? Okay. You can plant plants that that wasps don't appreciate. And there's a lot of crossover, but like white yarrow, common yarrow, that also attracts wasps. So don't plant that near your door. So when you get into it, see which plants attract the pollinators that you do like, and not the pollinators that you don't want. Of course, wasps are good for the ecosystem, but I understand you don't want to get stung. So yeah, it just takes a bit of research to see which best plants are. Yes. And then mini version of hugelkultur does wonders for hard clay, sort of simulating the organic materials of the prairie. You can look this up. It's called hugelkultur. It's different permaculturists do it. It's where you mound beds with logs and their organic material, and the logs break down, and yeah, it creates a raised bed with lots of nutrients. So that's a raised bed option. It's different than a raised garden bed, but it's like a mound, so you can do this. So yes, it seems it's 7:59. Our time wraps up at 8, and I really appreciate everyone for coming out here and sharing this time with me. And yeah, it's been great. It's been fun, and I hope I can answer any more questions in the future. Again, you can visit our website at earthlovegardens.com. And yeah, I hope to connect with more of you, after this seminar. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share in the seminar too.